This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. India's rising imports of Russian oil hit a record high of about 1.95 million barrels per day, BPD, in May, denting purchases from Iraq and Saudi Arabia fell, tanker data from trade and industry sources showed. India, the world's third biggest oil consumer and importer, buys more than 80% of its oil from overseas markets. Russian oil accounted for about 40% of India's crude imports in May, cutting imports from Iraq to a 3-year low and from Saudi Arabia to their lowest since September 2021, an analysis of the data showed.
Oil prices stabilized on Wednesday ahead of Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's congressional testimony later in the day, and as data showing British inflation remained sticky raised the possibility of a hawkish Bank of England policy decision this week. Brent futures slipped 10 cents, or 0.13%, to $75.80 a barrel by 11:59 GMT, and U.S. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude futures edged down 8 cents, or 0.11%, to $71.11. British inflation defied expectations that it would slow and held at 8.7% in May, data showed on Wednesday, boosting expectations that the Bank of England will raise interest rates by a hefty 0.5 percentage point on Thursday.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
The Biden administration plans to increase the amount of biofuels that oil refiners must blend into the nation's fuel mix over the next 3 years, but the plan includes lower mandates for corn-based ethanol than it had initially proposed, two sources familiar with the matter told Reuters. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency plans to finalize biofuel blending volumes at 20.94 billion gallons in 2023, 21.54 billion gallons in 2024 and 22.33 billion gallons in 2025, the sources said. That compares with the initial proposal announced in December of 20.82 billion in 2023, 21.87 billion in 2024, and 22.68 billion in 2025.
Canada will fall short of reaching net zero emissions by 2050, unless it takes actions beyond the efforts already underway, the Canada Energy Regulator, CER, said on Tuesday. The CER's annual report laid out 3 scenarios around Canada's net zero 2050 goal, an ambition that other countries have adopted as well. The report did not make recommendations on how to meet the goal. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government has implemented a carbon tax and is planning regulations to reduce emissions from electricity, fuel, and oil and gas production.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
Automakers, including Tesla and Mercedes, are rushing to lock in graphite supply from outside dominant producer China, as demand for electric vehicle (EV) batteries outpaces other uses for the mineral for the first time due to soaring EV sales. Auto firms have been slow to plan for graphite shortages, focusing mainly on better-known battery materials lithium and cobalt, even though graphite is the largest battery component by weight. Now, car makers are knocking at the doors of new producers, such as Madagascar and Mozambique, as this year EVs are forecast to account for more than 50% of the natural graphite market for the first time, according to consultancy Project Blue.
Dalian and Singapore iron ore futures extended losses on Wednesday as traders assessed how far top steel producer China might go to provide support for its faltering economic recovery. The most traded September iron ore contract on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange ended daytime trading 1% lower at 797 yuan and 50 fen, $110.86 per metric ton. On the Singapore Exchange, the steelmaking ingredients benchmark July contract was down 2% at $110.75 per metric ton by 0806 GMT. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector. Top wheat producer China has nearly completed this year's harvest, state media reported on Wednesday, but most demand for the grain so far is coming from animal feed makers. China was expected to produce 137 million metric tons of winter wheat this year, and state media have reported a bumper crop. But heavy rain and wind hit large swaths of the crop in central Henan province in early May just before the harvest began, triggering widespread early germination in the grain and other quality issues.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.